The feeding of the 5,000. Our reading comes from John 6 verses 1 to 14. It reads, "After these things Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. Then a great multitude followed him, because they saw his signs which he performed on those who were diseased. And Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. Now the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was near. Then Jesus lifted up his eyes, and seeing a great multitude coming toward him, he said to Philip, 'Where shall we buy bread, that these may eat?' But this he said to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little." One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish, but what are they among so many?" Then Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was much grass in the place. So the men sat down in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to the disciples, and the disciples to those sitting down, and likewise of the fish, as much as they wanted. So when they were filled, he said to his disciples, "Gather up the fragments that remain, so that nothing is lost." Therefore they gathered them up, and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which were left over by those who had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the sign that Jesus did, said, "This is truly the prophet who is to come into the world." End of the reading. Out of the 5 loaves and 2 fish, they all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. In the Gospel of John, the multitude was attracted to Jesus because of the healing works he performed, and the feeding of the multitude was taken as a further sign that Jesus was the Messiah. When Christ fed the 5,000 from the few, simple ingredients of a boy's lunch, those who witnessed the miracle said this about Jesus: "This is truly the prophet who is to come into the world." John 6 verse 14. The feeding of the 5,000 was intended to direct the attention of the people to Christ, the bread of life, who gives and sustains not only physical life, but life everlasting. There are many lessons we can learn from the feeding of the 5,000. Compassion and care. Jesus cared for the physical needs of the people, not just their spiritual needs. We should also show compassion and care for the whole person, addressing both physical and spiritual needs. God uses what we have. Jesus used the small offering of a boy, 5 loaves and 2 fish, to feed the multitude. God can use our limited resources and abilities to accomplish great things when we offer them to Him. Faith and obedience. The disciples distributed the food as Jesus commanded, even though it seemed insufficient. We should act in faith and obedience, trusting that God will multiply our efforts and resources. Abundance and satisfaction. Everyone in the crowd ate as much as they wanted, and there were leftovers. God provides abundantly and satisfies our needs when we trust in Him. Stewardship and gratitude. Jesus instructed the disciples to gather the leftovers to avoid waste. We should be good stewards of God's provisions, using them wisely and gratefully, pointing to Jesus. The miracle pointed people to Jesus as the prophet who is to come into the world. Our actions and service should ultimately point others to Jesus. The power of sharing. The miracle involved sharing and community, as the food was distributed among the crowd. Sharing our resources and blessings with others can result in multiplied impact and unity.